What is holding people back? Because there's a huge gap. There really is. There's a huge gap that we're struggling to fulfill within cybersecurity. Why do we have such a diversity gap in the industry, and how do we solve that problem?
I think it's awareness. One thing I say is if you kind of get caught in an issue where there's a breach or there's some kind of incident, or you're just having a tough time in cyber, if you don't like what you're doing, I mean, you're going to honestly bail. It's about your connections and your network. You have to stay plugged in, right? So for me personally, I literally have Google alerts on specific topics that pertain to my niche in cybersecurity.
Welcome to the Top Cyber Pro podcast, the show where we bring experts in the cybersecurity industry to share their valuable knowledge, experience, tips, tools, techniques, and resources to help you become a top cyber pro. And now, here's your host for this episode, Terry Thompson. The cybersecurity industry is lacking a tremendous amount of advocacy, which is why there is a diversity and representation issue that is not empowering entry into the industry, leading to why we have such a huge gap that we are struggling to fill. Today, we're going to talk about that and so much more. Today's guest is Candace Williams. Candace, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
Candace, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. You are truly phenomenal. I've been watching you for quite some time and the things that you're working on, and you are truly a leader within the industry, and you have a tremendous amount of influence and impact on women across the field of cybersecurity, and I'm excited to dive in today. So tell me, how did you get started within cybersecurity?
Oh man, so I was in the United States Air Force for about 6 years. I started out help desk, small computer support, and I was assigned my first role in what was then known as information assurance when I was stationed in Korea. And from that point, I continued on. I was stationed next to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in the computer security office. And when I separated from the military, I got my first role at Raytheon Technologies as an ISO. So it kind of spawned from there. I tell people I was assigned my first cybersecurity role in the military, and who knew it would, turn into a 20-year career and, where I am today. But that's how I got started in the military, and I was assigned the role. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's changed over the years too. So, I mean, I joined the military. I was in the military in the early 90s. And I remember seeing just the change from back in the old phones and the direct, direct line of sight type communication stuff. And it evolved over the years. Technology evolves, but so do people, and so does the things that people need in order to remain relevant. So before we dive into like career paths and everything, how do you stay relevant within a career that is just continuing to evolve?
I always tell people it's about your connections and your network. You have to stay plugged in, right? So for me personally, I literally have Google alerts on specific topics that pertain to my niche in cybersecurity. So GRC, or women in cybersecurity, or cybersecurity in general. I'm always getting fresh updates on the news, and I connect with people in this space because I have an understanding that it's always going to evolve. So in knowing that and remaining open and teachable, I'm always looking to figure out what's next, what's going on, and who can share what with me, and who I can share, what I know with. But it's a community, right? Cybersecurity is really a strong community of connections and knowledge sharing. And you got to stay on top of it, and not in a, oh my God, if you don't, you're going to fall off way, but you want to stay relevant and understand what's happening, because, you got to keep things secure. You got to stay aware. And if you're not, you're going to get caught up, right, in some kind of breach or some kind of issue because you're not aware of what's happening. So that's why it's important. It's a community, and it's pivotal to be ahead of, I guess, the criminals, right? If you kind of speak that way, but yeah.
I love that. And we're going to dive into some of those things here within our conversation here today. And but I want to talk about career paths, because there's many career paths within cyber. There really is. There's a lot of entry points. And even once you get into the field, you could start off with one thing and shift into another thing. That's what I love about cyber, because you're not really tied to one you're not really tied to one thing. No. What do you recommend someone just getting started out that will really help them make the decision, one, either to enter the field or to shift careers while they're already in cyber?
Yeah, so I always tell people when you enter into cyber, you got to focus on one thing. I mean, there are, like you just said, a myriad of different niches and roles in cybersecurity, and it's easy to get kind of caught up in all the different boot camps, certifications, all the paths that are available. So really focusing on the one thing that you actually like, that you enjoy. Because one thing I say is if you kind of get caught in an issue where there's a breach or there's some kind of incident, or you're just having a tough time in cyber, if you don't like what you're doing, I mean, you're going to honestly bail. We just as much as we have a issue with getting people in, we have an attrition issue, right? So I think it's really important to know what you enjoy and find that specific role that kind of aligns, so that when you do get in, you have a, you know, a thriving career. And in terms of pivoting while you're in, it's just the same thing. You know, if you realize, well, I'm in governance, risk, and compliance. If I don't like GRC and I prefer to move into something a little more technical, then you have the choice to kind of look at what the criteria is for that role. And then you say, okay, well, I have these things already checked off. You know, here's the gap that's left. I need to learn these few things, and then you pivot. But it's all about, again, the connection. So if I want to pivot into incident response, and you know, you're an IR POC, I'm going to connect with you and see how you can help and support me. But that's really what it is. It's the network, and then understanding the roles and the nuances between the two. Because although the foundations are the same, there's still those, again, the nuances and roles and responsibilities when it comes to the different niches. So
Yeah. I mean, it's been said that your net worth is really dependent upon your network. I love that. You know, and a lot of people really do not network. You know, there's different reasons for why people do or do not network. But I truly believe that if you're struggling with something, there's always somebody out there that has the answer, knows the answer, or at least can connect you with someone who can really kind of help or assist. And that's one of the things that I loved about the military. Even, you know, when I was in the military, I was active duty for 24 years. I've been retired for about 5 years now. And I'm still in contact with some people. I reach out and say, hey, you know, hey, brother, I need some help, man. Like, what are your thoughts on this? Like, you're in this field, like you're doing this. I truly believe that as well, too. Your network really is your net worth. And there's a lot of people that are willing to help out there. Here's one thing that I've really kind of that really kind of drives me crazy is that people often get IT and cybersecurity really confused. They really do. It still drives me nuts. It's like, look, they believe it's an industry made up of just geeks and gamers. And that kind of ties into the whole, you know, inclusion and diversity kind of message. But one of the things that I do love about your message is diversity and representation. Cybersecurity is definitely one of those industries. The door's wide open. Look, the door's wide open. People can come into the industry from all walks of life. You do not have to be one way or the other way, you know, all these different things. But here's what I want to ask you. What is holding people back? Because there's a huge gap. There really is. There's a huge gap that we're struggling to fulfill within cybersecurity. Why do we have such a diversity gap in the industry, and how do we solve that problem?
I think it's awareness, honestly. Knowing what options you have and empowering the next generation to understand those options. My niece is graduating, you know, this week. This is graduation week, and we had a party for her yesterday. And it was a couple of her friends there, and they were sharing, you know, what they want to do when they get out, nursing, going to be in the medical field, a medical coder, all these things. And I was like, you know, have you guys heard about cybersecurity? And they all looked at me like, what are you talking about? What is cybersecurity? And I was like, you know, wow, you have no idea what this field is at all, and the options available to you. And I don't think that that's isolated. I really do think that there is a messaging gap between, you know, those people who are going to come and take the reins of Candace when I'm retired, right? And who's going to, you know, fill these roles when it's time. So I think it's just, I think it's more awareness first. And then second, I would say, what you just mentioned, people confuse IT and cybersecurity, where they think everything about cyber is just as technical as IT, and it's not. And it's not to say that you don't have to understand technology, but you don't have to be a geek or a nerd or in the corner with the hoodie. That's not the representation. There's so many more roles. And I tell people, I'm not the most technical person in the world, but I understand technology, right? And I understand who does what so that I can support a cybersecurity program or a security program. And so I think that's what it's about. The messaging, right? You don't have to be super technical. And then, you know, how do you get in with understanding technology? Where do you start? right? And again, what role works best, for
Yeah.
you. So I think it's, again, awareness, and
I,
then
I
breaking
believe
those
that as well
barriers.
too. And I think you hit on a key point here just a minute ago about if you do not love the thing, then why would you do the thing? And there's a lot of things that people really enjoy doing. Like for me, I love the analytics side of it. So to
Yeah.
be an analyst, it really kind of fits within my ballpark. I love the business aspect of it. So doing business analysis and telling people where their gaps are and
Yes.
how they can improve. I'm also a writer. You're also a writer. So it's one of those
Yeah.
things to where you could write papers or policies and procedures. There's so many opportunities that are out there. It's not just, logging into a computer and, with a hoodie on and so on. You can do analysis, you can do writing, you can do all
Security
these.
awareness training. Yeah.
Yeah.
Training, consulting, so many things.
Exactly. And I had a teaching degree years ago that we're talking like 30 years ago, and I enjoyed the teaching aspect of it.
Yeah.
It's taking those knowledge, skills, and experiences that you already have and figuring out how you can shape that or mold that into shaping your career within cybersecurity. And I think when you marry the two, I think that there's lots of opportunity for you.
Yeah, there is.
You
There
know,
is.
and it reminds me of something as well too. When we're growing up, we was all aspiring to be certain things. Before I go into this, what was you aspiring to be when you was growing up?
Oh my God, I don't even remember. So I was such an interesting kid. I was a
Uh,
smart kid, but I was really aloof. And so
uh,
like I would just have these abstract ideas and just kind of be going with life and not really planning.
yeah.
So I don't remember what I wanted to be. I just knew I liked computers. I knew that much. I always had like an affinity for computers. So I would, yeah, it could be story time now. If I'll share the story. When my dad brought home our first little family PC. It was like an old Windows PC. And I was the one who was attracted to it, right? I'm on it every day playing games. I'm on it every day, just kind of doing whatever. And it broke, and here's Candace, 10 years old, trying to figure out how to fix it. And I loved it. Like I'd spend hours trying to fix it, doing random things. And of course, not following any kind of troubleshooting methodology. I was just going for it. But that same sort of affinity to figure things out, trying to find solutions and enjoying technology, even the idea of it has kind of been with me. So I didn't know I wanted to be a cybersecurity professional. I just knew I liked technology.
Yeah.
So that was the path. And then as I went, the doors would open when I tell people I like computers. Oh, really? Well, here, an opportunity shows up, or, you're able to join the military and be in a computer communications field. So that's really how mine evolved. It was more accidental likeness for technology. It was nothing planned.
I love that. And for me, I wanted to be a pro baseball player. And for the most part, I did. I had a career-ending injury that stopped my athletic career. And,
Oh,
and
wow.
I struggled my entire military career to really do things because I had a bad shoulder. And but it really kind of reminds me that, when we was growing up, everybody wanted to be like a doctor, an athlete, an astronaut, the traditional type things.
Yeah.
And nowadays it's really, I want to be a social media influencer, a TikToker, a
I
dancer, a
know.
fashion designer, all
It's
these
true.
different things. It's crazy how like these childhood, things that you want to become or aspire to be has changed. But I truly believe that the future of cybersecurity, just as you said, it begins in school, it begins at home. And at a young age, it's really kind of reinforced within that home environment. I think that a lot of people, as you say, you get a computer brought in, it's thrown in front of you, you get a laptop, you get a tablet or iPad or whatever, it's tossed in front of you like a babysitter. But for me, I remember when I got my first computer, I was like, I tore it apart. I wanted to break it. I wanted to see if I could fix it. I was just like you when it comes to that. But here's what I want to really kind of dive into, because both of my kids are in STEM. And I truly believe that really what begins in school can be reinforced in the home. But what do you feel that schools can do differently in their STEM programs to really get kids excited about a future career in cyber? And then what can parents do differently to really reinforce that?
I remember, maybe it was like 7 years ago, I was a part of, it was like a STEM program. Junior Achievement was what it was called.
Hmm.
And we went into school and there were like activities we did with the kids, where it was kind of interactive and hands-on. And it was really fun for them, right? And I think if there is like a little program similarly carved out for cybersecurity where we're explaining what these things are and they can kind of do the activities and understand it from a hands-on kind of tactical perspective, we can get them excited. Because right now there's really no awareness. When I think about And I've looked it up, right? Programs in schools like elementary, middle school, high school. And I don't really know when the deciding factor is for kids to really know about it, but it doesn't, to me, is the earlier the better, right? So there's an awareness, so they can say, I want to be a doctor. Oh, I have an option to also be a CISO, or an option to be, a penetration tester, whatever. But I think it's just finding interactive programs and ways to kind of explain to them what these roles and what these things are within this industry. So I think that's the first thing, right? Putting it in front of them early enough and making it fun, right? Because it can be. And the second part, I forgot the second question. What was the second question?
What can parents do to reinforce that in the home?
So for us, we lock our daughter's tablet. We lock all their stuff down. Right? So I will read stories to them about, like cybersecurity and understanding like passwords. And I'll find like educational material. There's an author, her name is Zanette Kamal. I buy her books. I have a few of her books that I've read to my girls, and I've given it to them to read. And the other day, my daughter, Callie, was like, Mommy, our neighbor, he has his safe password, and it's like, what? And she said, it's too simple. Someone's going to break into his safe. And I was like, well, you're right. Like, that's the idea, right? Kind of teaching them so that when they encounter these things, they can, even though it's a safe and not technology, she still understood the password needed to be more complex, right? So it's kind of putting the material in front of them as well as parents, and giving them kind of an association to what it should look like. And, my girls understand, don't talk to strangers online, and we are reinforcing if they do, it's a reprimand in a way, not hurting them, but it's like, no, don't do that. This is why. These are strangers. They can do this. They can take your information. And we just explain things to them at those intervals where, something happens that we recognize and call out for them. So I think that's how you're aware as a parent. So I'm in cyber, their dad's in IT, so they get it from both ends. But you also just, talk to them, explain why. Yeah.
And it really starts with a conversation,
Yeah.
it really does. It could be kind of in like a passive conversation, so to speak,
Yeah.
but with intention. And I think that if you have kind of a passive question with an intention, I truly believe that kids will really open up. They'll really kind of speak about it. It's like, what are you doing? The kid will shut down if you really kind of approach the child in that manner. But I think from an education standpoint, because both of my kids hate it. They don't like when I'm trying to teach them things. I'll be honest with you. They really don't like, Dad, I don't know why you teaching me stuff. I don't want to learn stuff, it's kind of a thing. But no, my kids are awesome like that. But really, I think it really comes down to a conversation. I think that if you present a conversation in such a way, kids, one, they'll listen to, they'll understand, and then they'll take action on what they're learning. Or they might not know that they're intentionally learning, but the message is still getting across.
Yeah, they know. I did a Great American Teaching at my girls' school as well. And I, brought up just an easy PowerPoint about passwords, MFA, like all kinds of things. And some of those kids in the 4th and 5th grade knew answers. They explained to me a few concepts, and I was really surprised. And what is 5th grade, like 9, 10? So they know more than we think they know, and they can absorb more than we think. So kids are pretty resilient and understand, again, more than we think. So
we ask them all the time. Like I've been in the IT field for years. I started coding and writing software and stuff like that when I was like 16, 17 years old, long time.
Yeah.
And I still have to ask my kids, like, hey man, how do you do this kind of a thing? I feel silly, but it's like, they play around because they're curious. And I think that if you really maintain that curiosity within your life, you could really kind of discover things that you never thought was possible.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. And I just want to get a plug in for Zanette real quick. She is absolutely phenomenal. I'm connected to her as well too.
She is.
And I've known her, gosh, how long have I known Zanette? I've known her for a few months now. So I got connected with her quite a few months ago, and just to watch her progress and the things that she's accomplished.
Yes.
She's truly an inspiration for a lot of people that's out there. And I always wish her continued success. I'm always showing her love on her posts and everything.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
she's definitely rocking it. She is a force to be reckoned with when it comes to cyber.
Yes, she is.
But
yes.
I want to shift into traditional education, because I truly believe that, traditional education and jobs require kind of a college degree and experience, so to speak. And that's really kind of the norm that we grew up with.
Yeah.
Cyber is not like that though. Cyber is one of those industries to where, yeah, college plays a role in that, experience plays a role in that, but really you can take control of your own destiny with certifications and training that's available and training that's out there. I want to know, how do you approach your training, certification, and how do you build upon your skills?
Man, so I've always been the person to get something before it's needed. So of course, when I started in cyber, all these tracks weren't there. I'd look it up. I'd say, okay, well, I want to remain in this field. So like, what's next? What degree should I get? And, I see it, my MIS degrees and my bachelor's. And I'd say, okay, well, what's next? Do I need a CISM? What's the next certification that makes sense? So I just built it from that perspective. I didn't know kind of what I was building, but I just try to make sense of it, right? I got an MBA because I wanted to understand business alongside information systems. So mine was just a little different, but I would just say kind of building upon your skills is, like we said earlier, first knowing what you want to do, and then figuring out what certs and what education will get you along that track. I don't want to discount degrees, because depending on the company that you're with and how early on in your career you are, you may need some sort of degree, right? It depends, but it's not required across the board. So like you just said, it's the certifications, it's the possible boot camps, right? And then maybe your degree later on. But it's totally open and up to you. I don't think there's no real set path, I guess, right? So I'm not sure how else to kind of play with that, but it's really no.
Well, you touched on something that's very important, and that's acquiring knowledge and skills that is outside of what is required. Here's what I mean by that. So for example, myself, I also have a business degree. I've also taken Lean Six Sigma. I'm a black belt Lean Six Sigma. I've done agile management. I'm Kirkpatrick bronze level certified. I mean, I can go on down the line of all the certifications that are not cyber related, but it's more business related type stuff. So the thing is that I truly believe that what you put within your toolkit will serve you when you need it the most. Truly believe that. But what do you take? What do you really do? And I think it falls down into what you truly enjoy doing. So for me, I enjoy the business side of it. So I chose a more business type path. Even though I talk about and I consult and I do all these different things, I really kind of focused on those things that people were not, they didn't think about. That way you can bridge that gap. So do you have any techniques that you use to really kind of bridge the gap? Like, let's say, for example, you're consulting a company or you're consulting a business. How do you bridge that gap of like knowledge, and skills with your experience?
I think it's just being aware of where you are, and then what the organization or what the person who you're serving, what they need. I mean, it's honestly just a continuous gap analysis, right? That's it. It's a continuous gap analysis. If I'm supporting something and I don't understand, what they're asking of me, or there's a control or there's a requirement that just I've never experienced before, I'm going to take the time to say, okay, well, here's what I do know, right? And then here's what I need to get, where I need to get. So what's the in between, and how do I get that information? That's it. It's a continuous gap analysis, and then finding the resource that will help you be educated, certified, or whatever it is on that thing or a person, right? Somebody may help you kind of bridge that gap. But that's it, Terry. That's the key. Just knowing what you don't know and being okay with that, and trying to, figure it out and learn.
And
that's what I've always
there's
done.
always opportunity to learn something new that's out there. And technologies are evolving. You've got frameworks that are evolving, policies, procedures. You got things like, and we're going to dive into that here in a minute, because I don't want to dive into this next section too soon here, AI. But it's one of those things to where it's always a moving target. And I think that's what makes cybersecurity exciting, is that you don't get complacent. You don't really kind of fall, get into an office and put your feet up on a desk and say, that's it, I'm done, I've arrived. It's a moving target. And I think that's what makes the industry really exciting. Yeah,
I would agree. Even for me, I'm in GRC, like I said earlier, specifically, and we've had some huge shifts in our frameworks and how we implemented our program. So I think it was maybe 2017, 2018. We went from an old framework to risk management framework, which was a huge learning curve. It took probably years for us to really find a good baseline and understand how to implement this within our specific programs across the board in the business. But it was huge. It was a learning curve. did the same thing, the gap analysis, figured out where we were before, the 1,000 controls that we now had to assess and be aware of, and how to meet those controls. And it's iterative, right? You learn and you kind of grow on, those changes and what you need and figuring it out. But it sounds simple, but it's all it is.
And I want to dive into GRC here in a minute. But before I do that, what baseline certifications would you recommend for someone trying to enter the cybersecurity industry?
So the most common certification is your Security Plus, right? That's the baseline that covers a broad array of things. But then I would just say it really depends on what you want to do. I've done like one-to-one cyber discovery calls with a couple people, and Security Plus may not always be your first choice, but that is similar to me to the CISP for entry level. So a lot of times when you see job recs, it's CISP, and you're like, okay, well, what else is there besides a CISP, right? There's CISA, there's CISM, there's all these other certifications to get, but it's that's probably the one general certification that if you have it, it'll get you in the door most places. But then entry level, but then as you kind of go into a specific niche, you need to understand what those certs are. So it's Security Plus would be the first that I would suggest for a security role specifically, or a cybersecurity role specifically.
And one cert really kind of builds upon the other. So I think even if you start off with something as simple as like an A+, having that baseline knowledge of equipment and things like that, maybe that's needed. You understand equipment, software, resources. I look at it more as resources than anything. That network, once again, it builds A+, Net+, Security Plus, CISP, it builds.
Yeah.
And it really kind of goes into what career path and career map that you have. But I'll agree with you as well, too. I think that Security Plus is a good baseline. And once again, everything just kind of tails off from there. But let's dive into GRC, because I know that's a great subject area for you right there. How do we solve governance issues as leaders? Because I truly believe that in the corporate world, a lot of leaders out there really have absolutely no clue where to begin. How do we solve governance issues?
But to me, that's the problem, right? It's not having a clue, but then not trying to get someone in there to help you figure it out, right? Because anytime I've supported programs or supported any initiatives, all of my funding, my support, my backing has to come from leadership. It has to come from the top down. And when you don't have leaders who understand the importance of cybersecurity, you end up understaffed, right? You're not able to implement the controls properly, and your program isn't solid, right? So in general, you're not going to have the team and the capability to actually, protect your information. But it has to come from leadership. They have to, even if not understand it from the technical pieces, be open to trusting their CISO or their leadership team to kind of, give them the summaries and be able to fund, these programs and have the proper support. I think that's what it is, top-down support and an understanding of the importance of the program to the bottom line, right? Because business risk and your IT risk kind of come together. If you understand your business risk and how that's also a risk with your systems, where to fund your money. Right. So,
and it comes down to advocacy. I mean, that's what I love about it.
True.
It really comes down to advocacy. And I think that it takes a leader in order to influence a leader.
Yeah.
And if you're the leader within your section, if you're in the cybersecurity or IT section, whatever label you want to put on that, I truly believe that from leader to leader, once you advocate for why should this program be funded? Why is this software more important? Why is this skill set or this person more important? It really comes down to advocacy. And I think that when you have those tough conversations amongst leaders, I think that's more powerful. But really, IT and cybersecurity, I think, is one of those things that really just kind of gets tossed to the side. I'm a leader and I don't understand it because I'm a business person. I'm going to stay away from it. You manage it because you're the cybersecurity expert. You just tell me when there's a problem and how much do I got to pay for it. I think there's a problem with that. So tell me, from a leadership perspective, how do you advocate to make cybersecurity a priority when there's leaders in industries that really don't understand it, and then they don't want it to be a priority, but you have to make it a priority? How do you go about that?
I would say it's just that bringing in awareness and kind of giving examples of how this failed for someone else, right? So it could be that you find a competitor, right, across the industry, and give an example of them falling short. And if not a direct competitor, someone else that's of equal standing in, in business. And, if they've undergone a breach or some sort of issue, right, find a way to make it real for them that this could happen to us as well. And then finding what business risks for your organization could impact if it was, realized, right? So I think that's the important piece, is showing them that this could happen to us too, and here's what we need to do, and being specific and being able to translate those, business risks to where we need to, fill that gap from a security program standpoint. I think that's it. Just an awareness. What do they say? The squeaky wheel gets the oil. It's really just making enough noise and being articulate, like you just said, enough to say, here's where we are, and here's why this is important. I think now it's a little bit easier. Well, in my opinion, it's a little bit easier for leadership to understand that cybersecurity is important, whether they want to or not, because it's you don't get an ROI on it right away. That's not how cyber works. It's just like insurance. It's an investment. But I think they have more of an awareness that this is important. It's just how much money you're going to give me, and where we're going to funnel this money to support our program and be effective. So education, making it real for them, and show how it actually impacts the business if we don't do this thing.
Yeah.
So.
And I've seen it. I mean, I've seen it from a corporate standpoint, military standpoint, to where you got mandatory training every year. I just don't think it's enough.
No,
I just don't think that the training is enough. I don't think that the funding is enough. And it really does. It comes down to a leader just taking it by the horn, so to speak, and just advocating the mess out of it, to where, what, sometimes you need that example, like you mentioned right there. Hey, look at this company. Here's what happened to them. Here's how it affected. Their data was lost. People were affected. Families were affected. Information, all this, and then once that becomes a reality, you're right. I mean, then I think leaders wake up. And then funding happens. Then it becomes it's like presenting a problem and a solution. You definitely don't want to bring a problem without a solution. But I don't know. We'll see how that evolves.
And I say sometimes too, it's unfortunately companies have to undergo some issue, right? Some incident before they realize, okay, this was important. And that happened, with a couple organizations that I know, right? We've had to fail, or we've had to undergo a breach to say, oh crap, well, we should have done this. It's kind of too late, but at least now you had the wake up call, right? Yeah. So sometimes it is that, unfortunately.
How do we clearly identify risks?
So you got to know what's important to your organization, right? So what may be a risk for my company may not be one for yours, because that's not an important, aspect of your business. So what are your crown jewels? Where's your important data? What's important to your company? You look at the 10K, figure out, what are the things that are identified by your company as goals, or again, the risks. And then you say, well, if this is a risk, if third party organizations are a risk, then let's look at shoring that up, right? If, our computing assets are most important, what specific ones are, something we should actually focus on to shore up. It's all about the specific business, right? What's important to the business. If this happened, what would cripple and stop operations, right? That's how you look at risk per organization, because it's not the same across the board. Every company doesn't value things, the same. So,
and how do we know when the risk management program is actually working and effective?
Well, you'd honestly say, okay, well, if your leadership said, here's where we're risk averse, or where we, want to make sure it's aligning with your leadership team. I don't know how to answer that. It's aligning with leadership. They're going to tell you and kind of set the barometer on, how much risk they want to accept or how much they don't want to accept. And then, you just kind of recalibrate and align with what they're.
I love that you said that, because it falls right into plan with a risk mitigation plan. It's like, what risk are you willing to assume? And here's the thing, and this is the one thing, and I really want to touch on this right here. A lot of people don't understand, just because there's a risk, it doesn't necessarily mean you stop operations.
Yeah, no.
Just because there's something that's out there that potentially could happen, it doesn't mean you just close down shop and business and, oh, well, we're going to be attacked. I think that it's really not a factor of if you will be attacked, but when you get attacked. And I think that comes down to having risk mitigation plans in place. What are your thoughts?
No, I would agree. Right. I would agree. Now, so there's categories to like risk, right? If you have like a risk, I forgot what it's called right now. It's like a risk legend where you say what's high, what's medium, what's low, right? What's important for us to, definitely make sure we don't allow this to happen, or to the best of our ability. What's kind of like, if this happens, it may impact us, but not really. And then if it's low, okay, well, if this happens, there's going to be no impact to operations. So I think that's where you kind of set that barometer. What is it like the CIA tried? What's important? Confidentiality, integrity, availability. You kind of assess, the importance of that for an organization. Does it need to keep our data safe, that no one knows who shouldn't know, right? Is it that our data can't change and it needs to be, spot on, or is it available to our users and to, those people who need access to the data? But that's really it. Like, you base it on how you're categorizing, the risks to that information, right? How impactful will it be to your organization if it's stolen, or if you can't get access to it, or if it's not available to your users?
And there's a lot of things that are out there. There's a lot of regulatory compliance systems, standards, if you will, such as like ISO, NIST, GDPR, HIPAA. I mean, I could go on there. There's a few of them that are out there. From your perspective, are there any that you feel that do not exist and maybe they should?
So I don't know if I have the answer to that one. I've been really in the aerospace and defense, like DoD space. So I'm highly like super focused on like RMF and NIST, right? NIST is kind of my home base. So from a industry perspective, or various industries, I'm not really, as versed on, hey, this is missing, or you guys need this. It's more, I'm in DoD, I know NIST, I know RMF, and that's kind of what I implement. That's my lane. So I'm not sure how to answer that one.
Sure. Understood. And data protection, there's a huge conversation going on right now about data protection. Recently, we got the TikTok ban that was happening. I really feel that it's bigger than that, because data is leaked all the time. Data is manipulated all the time. It's extracted all the time. What are the biggest threats to our data, and what measures can the average person take to ensure that their data is not at risk?
Oh man. So I went through exercise probably a few weeks ago. I got a new computer. And I kind of realized, even though I use a password manager, I had different variations of password managers depending on what account I was using and, where I was using it. So it's really kind of owning your own, passwords and where your data sits, and understanding, the importance of what you have yourself. So I keep my stuff like local to a hard drive, right? I keep things that are really important on an external drive for myself, or if it is in the cloud, it's certain things that I kind of put, out where it could be potentially breached or accessed. But it's just knowing your own data and how you manage it, right? And making sure you are using some sort of password manager to be able to help you not only maintain your passwords, but have complex passwords you don't have to remember. But it's just, it's an awareness of what data is important, and kind of trying to rein in, at least for me, where you've put your data, moving things, and kind of managing your own information in terms of personal data protection. But it's implementing, if there's updates to your software, update it, right? Don't just keep swiping on your phone and kind of letting it go. If your computer needs patching, let it run, right? Have AV software on your system. It doesn't take a lot to get Norton, right? That's the easiest one, and they put it on your system for you, and you can, run with it. Get the Geek Squad, right? Find some way to make sure you have those basics, right? Password management, AV definitions, patching, software updates. And as annoying as it is, right? You just have to do it. And that's how you keep your own data safe. And just, being aware of, we talk about phishing attempts, and knowing when something is legitimate, and just kind of doing your own research on something before you click on it, or follow it, or do it, right? So it's those basic things, which sounds basic to me, but maybe for most it's like, what?
Yeah.
So
those updates are frustrating. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it.
They're annoying.
Those updates, they are like, you need an update for the update. I've just another update is available. Like, oh my goodness, it is so crazy, because look, I have both Windows and Mac, and it's one of those things to where, is there such a thing as too secure? Is there really such a thing?
It is, right? So we kind of talked about it. So even when you look at like RMF and you're implementing a framework, you're not going to implement every single control,
Mhm.
you're just not to the T, right? You can't. There's some things that are going to really stop you from doing business. So there is a thing is over securing something, right? You have to make sure that you're still able to function as a business or even as a person.
Yeah.
I'm not going to implement every single possible,
Mhm.
control on my own PC, right? I may let face recognition go by and I'll have a password manager here, but I'm not going to do,
Mhm.
all these other things that may, well, first of all, be annoying and prohibit me from working effectively
Yeah.
if I'm somewhere else. So no, I think it depends. You have to be able to do whatever it is you do as a business or a person without
I
mucking things
agree.
up.
I agree with that. I mean, it's really annoying, and there's so many things that are out there, and I get it. It's one of those things where you still have to be able to operate, to be able to log in, to be able to access, to be able
Yeah,
to do all these different things that we need to do. But man, no matter what measures are put in place, vulnerabilities are always going to be found. And I think that once you
always.
accept that fact right there, that I don't think that we should ignore a lot of the things that are in place. But once again, it's a matter of the data or a matter of the things that you're willing to risk, so to speak.
Yeah.
But then again, the average person is out there really just kind of tossing all kinds of things out there, unbeknown to them. It's
It's true.
crazy. I'll give you an example. I had a friend of mine that I actually had to reach out and tell them to take a video down off of Instagram because this person was like, they created a video complaining about how TikTok exposes their data and this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, this is how you delete that. And they exposed their phone number on the video. And I'm sitting here, I almost wanted to call them on their
Like,
phone number and said, hey, I just saw your phone number on Instagram. I just called you from your, now I know your phone number. But no, I did the right thing. I DM'd the person and said, hey,
yeah.
you just exposed the very thing you were complaining about. You know that, right?
Yeah. And that's it too. But that's a good point, right? What you're showing and what you're putting out there is you got to control that, right? Some
Yeah.
people say like your birthday, your last name, your dog's name, those kinds of things, right? You kind of got to consider, what's PPI, but most people don't know that. They don't consider it. They think no one cares enough about me or my data to do anything to me. And that's not true. It just takes the right person, the right click, and you're compromised. So yeah, you do have to be aware of that.
Yeah.
And that's a hard one because people don't think it applies to them.
Yeah.
They don't think it'll happen to them. And
I
that's what
laughed a
most,
little bit. I laughed a little bit, but I was like, you know what? I have to tell this person that they just exposed.
yeah, no, you got to get your number offline, sir. You can't do that. So
So I want to talk about data loss and the ability to operate in critical conditions. In the military, it was called COOP, Contingency Operations Plan. And really, there's small businesses that are out there that I really believe that, we could kind of hold corner like the whole consulting industry within cybersecurity, because small businesses don't have a big business budget. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity that's out there for consultants to really reach out to these small businesses who really cannot afford to lose their ability to provide service. So I want to know, what exactly can small businesses do to protect themselves in case of disaster? And I really kind of say that loosely, I really do, because disaster can mean a lot of different things. But what can small businesses do to protect themselves?
and I would say the biggest thing is making sure you at least have data backups, right? You're at least backing up important data. I highly doubt, like you said, a small business has a budget for a hot side, warm side, cold side, right? So backing up your data and maybe finding a way to leverage the cloud, finding a way to leverage that so you can have some sort of system or some sort of functionality that's not necessarily predicated on what you have locally at your business. So maybe that's an option, but definitely back up your data, back up critical data at a minimum, and then figure out once it is backed up, how you're going to get new systems or what infrastructure you're going to have in place to now access that data and keep functioning. So that's maybe like, something that's a little bit simpler, but just data back up your data. Be the first thing.
And, and just to kind of touch on training and awareness, I think that once again, it really kind of comes down to training and awareness. Even small businesses need training, awareness, consultation, so to speak. What is really kind of being neglected, or what is an opportunity out there? Or do you have any examples of great training programs or any type of things? I'll give an example. ISC Squared, I think they offered like 1 million, something like that, certificates and free access and this, that, and the other. What training or awareness programs that are out there that you're aware of that you truly believe the average person could take advantage of?
So I know some high level ones, but within my organization, we have an internal security awareness program, right, that we develop and we create. So we don't really leverage outside organizations. But I mean, I do know orgs like Know Before, but that is like larger. You have to kind of have a bigger, more seats and to be able to support that. So if you're a small business, I don't know of any small business friendly security awareness organizations, but I know people who do it, right? Like one-to-ones, or people I'm connected with on LinkedIn offer security awareness training. I've offered it before, so it just depends. But it depends. I don't know a specific org to share. Just the Know Before, which wouldn't apply for like someone with a business of 1 to 10 people. That'd be way too expensive.
Yeah,
sure. I gotta think about that one. I'm sure I know someone in my network that offers it, but I gotta think about it.
Yeah, I know ISC Squared, they offered that, and I took advantage. I mean, I didn't really need it, but once again, I took advantage of it because it was there.
I thought that one, the CC was for like practitioners versus like the users. So if we're talking about like training your users, then that'd be a little bit different. That's what I thought we were talking about. I don't know. And but I missed the
well, even from a basic educational standpoint, I mean, even if you took advantage of like that free thing and you got the certificate, you could still show proof of training, at a bare bones minimum.
I got you. Okay. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that is an option. I mean, there's definitely certifications and programs that would allow that, but I in terms of users, I don't think most common users would probably take that. They probably be overwhelmed by the CC, but
yeah.
I can't.
So I want to kind of quote somebody here. I truly believe this. I've read a lot of John Maxwell books. I love John Maxwell.
Yeah, I
don't know how many hundreds of books this guy's written over the years, but I've read at least 40 of those things. And one of the most powerful quotes that he had was, "Everything rises and falls on leadership." And I truly believe that we are definitely lacking leadership in the cybersecurity industry. And I think it comes down, like we said earlier, it comes down to awareness. It comes down to a lot of different things. Are there any like definitive leaders within the cybersecurity industry that we could highlight?
I'm sure there are, and I know there are. I'm connected to probably several of them, but as you're asking, I'm not thinking of their names, but I think, so I don't know that just in general, there's one person to lead the charge. I think it just depends on this space that you're in. So what would apply to me in the aerospace and defense industry and how we lead and move forward is different than somebody who's in a different, like the medical industry or something else. I think it's just different. Yeah, and I can't think of any names, so shame on me, but I can't. Shame on me.
Who's your mentor? Who do you look up to within the cybersecurity industry? Because I have a mentor. I have several mentors that I truly like. That's that next person up. Like I'm ready. Like I'm listening to this person, watching, observing, learning. Who's your mentor?
Yeah. So when it comes to like the defense space specifically, it's internal to my organization. So I look at my leadership and kind of what they do to implement different controls and different things for our programs. But just cybersecurity as a whole, when I look at people, I think it's for different things, right? So like locally, I've connected with like Courtney Jackson, who's, CEO of Paragon Cybersecurity Solutions in Tampa. I think from a business perspective, I look at her and respect what she's done in the industry, right? So that's the why I look at her. And I look at, Confidence Stavely, but she's on a totally different continent. But I look at how she's implementing her cyber safe program for girls getting into cyber. So I look at people for different things. But in terms of my career, I think it's just a holistic look at where I want to be and kind of who's doing it. And I cherry pick. I've always been a cherry picker. I don't always have just a person to say I'm following them for, Candace's career. I look at what this person's doing, what that person's doing, this person's doing, and make sense of it for myself. Yeah. But again, I look at people for different things. Those are two names I can think of, right? Those two people I always kind of go back to. So that's.
No, I get it. It kind of falls into the category of no matter where you are, there you are, and no matter where you are, people are watching, they're looking, they're observing, you're always on display. And I truly believe that. I guarantee you that there's people that are looking at you like, you know what, Candace is a rock star. She's my mentor. She's my leader. I guarantee it.
Yeah. I mean, if they do, if they do great, I mean, I hope to do that. That's my goal, right? Is to share and kind of give people just some hope that, hey, if Candace can do it, so can you. And I think other people do the same. Like when I'm looking at folks and I'm reading their profiles and what they've done, and I'm being inspired, and I'm kind of just, pulling from them. I'm sure the same happens. And that's what I want. That's the goal.
I love
Because
that.
it's accessible.
Before we dive into the last section here, I want to know, what do you see is the biggest threat in cybersecurity today?
Are we talking to technical threat, or just in general in terms of the growth
Anything
of the
in
industry?
general? What is the biggest threat in cybersecurity today?
I would say if the people who are trying to gatekeep, right, and making cyber inaccessible because of some arbitrary rule or some arbitrary thing that really isn't
Interesting.
An across the board standard. So if just a general one is, okay, well, you have to be super technical to get in cyber. Like you got to know all these different things before you can, and entry level roles don't exist. And, if they do, they have all these unrealistic expectations, right? Which happens, but there's still pockets and organizations who understand, what an entry level role is. And there are still opportunities for people who don't necessarily have a highly technical background to get in. So I think the gatekeeping, the idea that you have to be this way, is discouraging. And I think that honestly is one of the biggest threats, because it keeps people away, and it propagates this just a discouraging energy for people. I think my platform, even though some people say I'm being unrealistic, I don't think so, right? I think it's important to kind of open up the eyes and awareness of what's available, so that people can, get into the space. So I think that the gatekeeping, the pessimism when it comes to what's available, is because we need people in the space. We need people staying in a space. We need people that enjoy what we're doing, because it can be a challenging job, depending on what you do in cyber. So that's the biggest threat, the naysayers, the pessimists, the gatekeepers.
Insider threats. That's what they are. They're insider
threats. They are. They are.
No, I love, and once again, and I see your point with that, because it does not lend very well to advocacy look, we all know we know that there's a gap. Like, I just don't understand, why would people even gatekeep or keep people? I think it comes down to a few different things. One, you got quality control. You got, you want to make sure that you get quality people in. You want to make sure that you maintain certain standards. And I get a lot of that stuff right there. Yeah. But at the end of that, if you are not advocating, if you are not sharing knowledge, skills, experience, information, stories, whatever label you want to put on that, I truly believe that you are not building the future of the industry. And right now, the future of the industry is in great demand, but it's also at great risk.
It is. And we need more positive advocates than cynics, right? Because I'm sure people have bad experiences with getting in cyber. I'm sure you hear it all the time. Well, I had a leader who had no idea about technology, or I had, this person came in and had no clue what they were doing. Well, that may be a one-off. How do you help them, right? How do you change that? What do you do to fix it, right? So instead of the complaints, the solutions, right? How do you make it better? We need more of that versus,
Yeah, 100%. I love it. Here's the last section. Let's dive into some AI, because there's a lot of hype. Oh my goodness. I get probably 100 emails a day about ChatGPT and AI. Yeah. It drives me absolutely bonkers how these people, I mean, I know how they're getting my email. They're scraping, they're doing all these different, techniques to get, but it's just, it's not overwhelming, but it's quite frustrating, and it's annoying at the same time. Yeah. But I kind of want to know, what are your thoughts about AI?
So I'm not an AI expert. This is just me being a consumer as well of using it. I think it's a benefit, right? Yeah. I think with anything, you have to always add the human element to it, but it's just a resource in my mind. Exactly. As long as you're not, going in there, typing in questions, getting answers, just regurgitating it and throwing it somewhere, or I don't know if it's plagiarizing because it's unique content, but still just taking what ChatGPT says and just spitting it out and using it, right? You should use it as a resource, but you always reframe it, add your own element to it, make sure it sounds like you and it's your voice, and you're actually using it as a tool. I had this example. My husband and I kind of talked about it a few weeks ago. And I said, well, back in the day, you had ghostwriters. Or you had people who, would write your posts for you, or you had someone creating content for you. How is it any different? Because it's something you can type in easily to your computer. That's how I felt. I was like, well, what's the difference between me sending it to Joe Schmo on Fiverr to create this for me versus, leveraging my own,
Yeah.
prompts for ChatGPT. So that's how I look at it. And I think there's immense opportunity to leverage AI for either training, right? Training purposes, and just making things a little bit easier for us. So that's my take. To me, it's the, digital version, the computer version of the Fiverr guy who you hire to write your posts or write your content, or the ghostwriter that you use to help you write your book.
That's a very unique perspective. I look at it. It's your digital virtual assistant, so to speak.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's a VR or a VA. To your point, yeah, that's what it is to me.
I love it. I've embraced AI. I'm trying to figure out different uses for it, but you have to put that human element. You have to check it. You have to copy and paste and put it into Grammarly to check for play. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you have to put into consideration. I've seen some cringy AI that's out there. Like people, like they'll just take a photo of themselves and just their lips are moving. It's oh my goodness.
I've done that. It's pretty fun. That's actually fun to me. It's funny to see. I've done that for myself.
it is funny to see, but it's like cringy at the same time. But
your head's not moving. And it's like, yeah, I have a video I created actually with myself. It was really a shot of me and my lips are moving and my teeth aren't mine. It's like these, I don't know what it is. It's really, it is weird. But
I think that podcasting is one of those things that you'd have a really hard time checking, especially with the voices getting more and more real. I think that there might be some opportunity in podcasting, audio only with no video. I truly believe that you will never be able to really discern like who's who or what's what or whatever. And you could literally create audio and nobody will know the difference.
It's true.
Kind of a thing. I think that there's some things to be aware of, things that are scary, but I also think that it's exciting as well too. It's not going to be the end of the world. There's people that are catastrophizing all this. People are catastrophizing, oh, jobs are going to be replaced. I totally get all that. I 100% absolutely do. And there's going to be people that are just, they're going to put fear out there in the world. And I agree with it, but I also disagree with fear. But I want to know, what are the biggest cybersecurity risks associated with AI?
Man, so it's making sure that you're not putting your own personal data into that system, right? So when you type something in, like if I'm using ChatGPT and I'm typing in, my dog's name, my kid's name, my birthday, all this information, it's going somewhere, right? So you still have to govern what you put into whatever system you're using. And you're cautious of that. So I think that's probably one of the biggest risks, because people are, if I want to write a story or write a book or write something, you're putting in all you can. So it churns this thing out for you. But then are you really paying attention to what you're putting into whatever that application or whatever that, system looks like? I think that's probably the biggest threat, because people just think, oh, it's no big deal. It's just, where's it going? I don't know, but I'm going to get what I need from it. And it doesn't matter what I'm putting into the system. But that to me is one of the biggest things. And then people using it maliciously, right, to create code or attacks, right? I mean, that happens, but I think it's more the user and how they're interacting with it, because most people who are using it aren't necessarily cyber professionals or cyber pros, are using it for, like you said, as a VA or to help them create content, and they're not really aware of the importance of, governing their data and what they're putting into the system.
Do you feel that we can use AI to improve cybersecurity?
I'm sure there's opportunity, right? I know a couple people who are actually trying to innovate and figure out solutions for AI to teach tech or to teach cyber and how to use it as, again, a resource and I lost my words. Using it as just a resource, right? As a teacher or like a mentor, right? Trying to create something so that students or people who have no idea about cyber can learn or be taught about it. I mean, I've seen those things happening. So from that perspective, yes, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it does. It feels like the Wild West right now. It truly does. It really.
I mean, it is.
AI is one of those things that it's not a new idea. It's not really a new concept. It's just that it's here. And I think that's
accessible to the everyday person.
Exactly. It's accessible. Yeah. I think there's people that are afraid of it, people that'll embrace it, people that use it for good, people that are using it for bad. Look, here's the thing. it's the Wild West that's out there right now. The AI industry and within the industry, things are really kind of popping up. Every single day I see all these new things like that are available. People are using it to create new things out of new things. It's just so crazy. I have to know, and I think that there's a degree of ethics in play here. What are some of the ethical considerations that people must really keep in mind when considering or implementing AI?
I would say if you do 100% use, AI or Chat GPT or whatever, some people talk about disclosing it and putting it on your post or putting it out somewhere that you use Chat GPT. I don't know, right? Because if I had a ghostwriter or somebody who helped me write my content and I had a VA or someone else, I'm not going to put on the bottom of that thing, my VA helped me write this, or my VA did this for me, right? So I don't know. I would definitely say I've gotten a lot more students. My husband, again, a conversation about students using Chat GPT wholly and having no idea about content, no idea about what they were, spitting out, putting on paper, submitting it. And when questioned, they had no clue what they turned in. So I think whether you're in trouble or not, it's going to show itself, right? If you're using it to write papers or produce content and you go and stand in front of someone and you really can't speak to what you're doing or speak to what you've written about, then there's going to be a lack of trust in, what you're sharing and who you are. Yeah. So I think that probably to me is an ethical thing. Like if you're writing it and putting it out, make sure you know what the heck you're talking about and it aligns with what you actually do and what you know. That'd probably be the biggest thing for me if we talk about ethics. Do I really know this? Is it really just helping me as a supplement to what I know to make it easier to produce this stuff? Or am I using it as a crutch where I have no idea what's going on and I'm just showboating and trying to make myself look better and bigger than I am?
Yeah.
So maybe that's the perspective where it's like ethics, like, okay, that's
putting that human element into it. I mean, you really kind of hit the nail on the head earlier when you said put that human element into it. Verify, trust, but verify.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
I trust that this piece of software or technology is going to give me, all the answers that I need, depending on the prompts and this, that, and the other, but I'm going to verify that. Right. And I think that adding your own human element, your own stories, your own kind of like, I agree with what this thing said, but I wouldn't say it that way. I would have said it this way. So then adding your own touch, your own feel, your own personal touch to it, I think is valuable as well too.
Ideation. I told someone else that the other day. It's just ideation. It's like Googling something to me. If I can't think of an idea, I Google, hey, well, how should you say this? And Google tells you like, hey, there's options, you read articles and you kind of put it together. All it does is help with, at least for me, it's idea generation.
So I'm only going to ask one catastrophe question. I was going to say catastrophization. That's a whole big Texas word right there, but I'm going to ask one catastrophe question here. Do you really believe that AI is the end of creativity, or do you feel that it's the beginning?
It goes back to how you're using it, right? It's how you're using it. Are you using it to spark an idea, right? Brainstorming, kind of getting in there and then running with it. Or are you using it as your idea? So I think that's to me where it would determine whether it's the end or the beginning. And so it's how you're using it. You can't let it speak for you. You can't. Then it will stifle you, and you're not gonna be able to think for yourself and kind of create these new and innovative ideas. All right. So no, it's how you're using it. A spark, or is it the idea?
I love that. Candace, thank you so much for taking time with talking with me today. Yeah. If you could share one golden nugget, like one thing that is like, this is it right here, you could just reach anybody, teach anybody, or share the most important thing that you could share, what would that one golden nugget be?
Listen, so I would say, however you show up, right? Just make sure you are authentic and showing up as you. You don't know who you can help and who you can support by being who you are and sharing what you know. And I think that's, to me, the basis of this whole cybersecurity culture and just life in general, being iterative, right? Connecting and sharing what you know to truly help and serve. I think that's the importance. That's what it all boils down to. So yeah,
I love that. Candace, thank you so much. What are you currently working on? So do you have any current projects, anything you're currently working on you want to share with everybody?
There is. So I do have an ebook I'm working on. It's called No Experience Required, Your Career in Cybersecurity Kickstart Guide. So hopefully it's going to be done by the end of June and I can release it and share it. It's really focused on helping those who are brand new to the field, who have no idea what they want to do, to create a career plan and have a focused start to their cybersecurity career, so that it's thriving once they kind of get to the point where they're growing and developing their career. So that's it. It's an ebook, no experience required.
I love it. What's the best way for anyone to connect with you? How can they connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn, Cyber Ally. I am on Instagram, same handle, Cyber Ally. And then my website, so cyberally.com is my website. And cyber is spelled CYBHERALLY.
I love it. And I'll make sure that I have all of those links posted within the description everywhere that this episode will be posted. Candace, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And thank you for watching this episode of Top Cyber Pro. If you want more tips, tools, techniques, and resources, then head over to our website, topcyberpro.com, along with getting connected with us on all of our social media platforms for the latest cyber news, tips, and big ideas. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.